What's going on YouTube? It's Teej back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my Week 4 NFL Power Rankings. Do want to say at the start of the video, sorry no video this past weekend. Work was crazy. We had 5 different broadcasts going on Saturday, so didn't really have time in the time leading up to those broadcasts, and then of course on Saturday itself to get a video out. I do apologize, but back with our Power Rankings video. Hopefully going to get back on track this week. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. And if you do, just hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel, want more football content like this, just hit that big red subscribe button. And comment your takeaways from this Power Ranking down below. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who's your favorite team? Where do you think they fit in the mix? Love to have your thoughts, whether you think I'm crazy or if you think I'm spot on. Love to have that discussion with you down below in the comment section. So let's talk about these Power Rankings down in the comments. So let's start with the Jacksonville Jaguars at 32. Their play's been bad. Their team management hasn't been much better. That CJ Henderson trade is just wrong. I don't know how Urban Meyer can let that happen to a guy who's just taken 9th overall, even if he doesn't necessarily fit your scheme. You got to give more time to develop and get better or get more value out of that. I mean, I have a hard time thinking that had Seattle, Kansas City, San Francisco, Pittsburgh, a number of other teams that need cornerback help, had they known CJ Henderson was a backup tight end and a 3rd round pick and a 5th in exchange, gonna net them CJ Henderson, I think they would have gotten a few more calls, and then in turn, by getting more calls, increases the value of CJ Henderson. I don't know. Feels like something's missing there, but Panthers got to steal with the value of CJ Henderson. Even if it doesn't help him now, he's just someone as a building block moving forward. Him and JC Horn could become a really nasty man press duo. So again, I just don't know what the Jags are doing. They come in at 32 easily. Jets, that offense still looks pretty bad. Michael LaFleur's going to start feeling some pressure, and not in the sense that he could lose his job, but they need to start showing some results. That offense is not as bad as it has looked. I know the offensive line is still being stitched together, minus Mekhi Becton, and a lot of the wide receivers are still young, but I don't know. Based off the expectations, not only myself, but plenty of other people had for this offense, it's a little too flat-lined for where it really should be. Even if we were overselling it, it's flatter than its lower end of the variance. Lions come in at number 30. Look, I know they're 0-3, and throughout this video, you're going to see teams with 1 win over teams with 3. I'm not just shooting the standings at you in a video. I'm basing this off of my preseason expectations and what I've seen on the field. Are they losing by a lot? Are they losing close, home, away, division games? All those things baked into it. So all that to say, Lions 0-3. They have looked better than the Jets and the Jags in the sense of they're staying in games. They're playing tough. They're giving me a lot of those Giants first year with Joe Judge where they're just sticking around. They're being competitive, keeping themselves in games. And that merits something, right? Like backdoor cover against the 49ers. Competitive first half against the Packers. Lose off a record-breaking kick from the Ravens. Those are 3 playoff teams, or potential playoff teams, and they're keeping it close. So that is deserving of moving up 2 spots in my eyes. Texans move up a spot. I know they lost as well. I don't think Davis Mills was all that bad. I don't think Tim Kelly really put him in a spot where he could have been more than fine. Just they had the training wheels on that offense. I mean, they babied it down. They dumbed it down beyond all belief. Kind of like what we'll talk about with the Bears here. It was one of those things where I'd rather see what that quarterback looks like in your offense, and we'll see if he can sink or swim, versus, okay, that quarterback can operate in a version of that offense, but the scheme itself sank because it's not enough to beat an NFL caliber defense, especially a good one in Carolina. So I don't think Tim Kelly did what he should have done with Davis Mills, but we'll see moving forward. Maybe they'll change that. Giants down a spot. I just can't believe they lost this game. They don't have a great offensive line for sure, but Falcons don't generate a lot of pass rush. They have a clear advantage when it comes to wide receivers versus the secondary of Atlanta, but I think Jason Garrett is not that guy anymore in regards to being an offensive mind and a play caller and just a scheme play designer. I just think maybe he's better served working with quarterbacks and mechanics and things of that nature. He was a backup quarterback in the NFL, obviously. I just don't think him as a play caller and scheme designer is it anymore. And I think it's a serious position that the Giants have to look at changing maybe midway through this year or potentially after the season comes to a close. That's a really disappointing loss this past weekend. Bears down 4 spots, and I mean, I'm not trying to kick a dead horse, but that was bad. That was really ugly. I don't think Matt Nagy allowed Justin Fields to have an opportunity to be more than okay. I know Fields definitely looked slow. Like, I'm not trying to put all this blame on Matt Nagy. Like, Fields didn't look ready, and the Browns came out swinging. I mean, they knew they had an inexperienced quarterback on the other side. and they did not let him come up to breathe. And I mean, credit to the Browns and that aggressive defensive scheme. I mean, they had the right game plan. But, between the offensive line not being good for Chicago and just the play calls, they're just leaving Fields out to dry. So I know he's a little slow, but that on top of not a comprehensive or well thought out offensive game plan, I mean, they were just not going to stand a chance against one of the best teams in the AFC. Falcons move up 2 spots. I still can't believe they won this game. They have no completions over 20 yards this year. They've only completed or attempted 3 passes of that nature. They're using Kyle Pitts like a pawn instead of being the queen that he is on the chessboard where you can move in any sort of direction and any number of spaces. They're just using him in the most baseline version of what he should be, and it's really infuriating because I did not expect that from Arthur Smith. Additionally, the offensive line has been terrible. Arthur Smith's a former offensive line coach. Feels like that unit should be at least better than what they've been, but they have been really lackadaisical. And Matt Ryan's arm looks softer this year, way more of a downturn than what we saw last year compared to the year prior, if that makes sense. Like the drop-off in the year before, this is the year where it's the most obvious for Matt Ryan. So they got the win, but I still have plenty of concerns with Atlanta. Philadelphia Eagles also really disappointing loss. I actually saw them winning that game outright, let alone covering the spread. They didn't do either one of those. Really embarrassing showing, and that defense looked fraudulent. And I mean, I know Dallas's offense is going to do that to a lot of good teams, but the Eagles didn't look like they had any sort of chance holding their own on defense. I mean, the strip sack, and that was about it. Like, you get the touchdown from the defense, and that is about all they could speak for on that side of the ball. Steelers down 4. Man, this offense looks like a bad high school offense. I mean, the quarterback just does not want to throw the ball more than 5 yards down the field. I don't know if it's Ben being scared of pressure, the elbow still lingering, if it's mental, if it's physical. I don't know, but it's not pretty. I mean, when you have Najee Harris, your running back, getting 19 targets, that just signifies that this offense, Big Ben in specific, is scared to push the ball down the field. Now, they gave Chase Claypool a couple chances, deep, 15, 20 yards down the field. Still nothing crazy. And they're down Deontay Johnson, so how much does that change it? But it's swing routes on 4th and 10 to Najee Harris. It's wide receiver screens. It's passing plays that are basically an extension of the running attack. I don't know. That offense is just not what I expected. It looked promising for Matt Canada in the preseason and week 1. But now it feels like more of the same what we saw last year. A lot of short dink and dunk stuff, and I don't know if that's Matt Canada. I don't know if it's Big Ben, but yikes. That offense is the exact way to ruin what should be and what will be, especially when TJ Watt's back, 8-5 defense. I mean, it's sad. It's pretty embarrassing. I mean, as a Steelers fan, I grew up watching Ben Roethlisberger. Now it's just sad to see him struggle like he is now. Bengals beat the Steelers. They're coming in at number 23, moving up 3 spots. Though I will say that that game this past weekend felt more indicative of how bad the Steelers look versus how good the Bengals are. But hey, they executed their game plan. And then how about that chemistry between Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase? And they took advantage of, James Pierre definitely not being someone who can check Jamar Chase, taking advantage of matchups. It's a game of one-on-ones in a lot of ways. So Cincinnati did a good job getting the ball into their playmakers. And, you only ask Joe Burrow to throw 18 times. That's really an interesting concept in itself, but hey, for sure, it's going to keep him healthy, or at least increase the chances of him staying healthy. And I think that offensive line has gone from egregious to just bad. They're not a good unit by any stretch, but they've gone from, wow, you can't have Joe Burrow out there, he's going to get hurt, to, yeah, that's a unit that needs to get better with another offseason. So some strides and improvement. And how about the defense, especially the linebacking core? Logan Wilson looked really good, picked off Ben a couple times off of one bad decision. The second pick that he had, Ben just chunked it right into his stomach. And then the first one, really nice athletic play. But overall, I think that Bengals defense is improving as they continue to grow up over time. Washington football team come in at number 22. Taylor Heineke feels like Ryan Fitzpatrick, just younger, more athletic. And this felt like one of those weeks where you just have to take your shots, because there are going to be weeks where Heineke or Fitzpatrick just don't play well. They force the issue and they're not thinking with their head straight, whatever the case may be. And that's kind of what it looked like. He had a couple of touchdowns back to back after the weird special teams play where you recover on the deep kick. But that felt like it had the game close. But other than that, 5 to 7 minute stretch, this was all Bills from start to finish over Washington. They are moving up a spot, but that's just because of the way the board shifted. Them and the Colts and Miami all lose, but ultimately move up a spot. But they're all in this middle of the pack where defenses are okay. Question marks to the QB definitely hold them back. So the Colts are at 21. Carson Wentz just did not look healthy, and I think it's a bad idea to have him out there if he's not playing at 100%. if this isn't a division game, like if they're, say playing San Francisco, just a random team, and they have the NFC West on their schedule this year, if they weren't playing Tennessee, I feel like they've been more inclined to just throw Brett Hundley or Jacob Eason or both of them out there and just say, hey, Carson, you're not 100%. But because it's a division game and they're facing 0-3, they felt a little bit more, pressure on their side to have Carson Wentz out there and try to be close to 100% as possible. And yeah, he just did not look great. And they lack some explosiveness when it comes to their playmakers. Again, I like Michael Pittman, but he's just not that guy. He's not a big play waiting to happen type of dude. And, Paris Campbell just hasn't done that yet this year. So still worried about that offense for the Colts. Thought Jonathan Taylor would have a bigger impact in this game too, but that was not the case. Dolphins come in at number 20, and hey, they battled with a team that's right in the thick of it, leading their division, if anything. But it feels like the Raiders are certainly in the playoff hunt. And the Dolphins went to Las Vegas and held their own. And I mean, it wasn't necessarily super pretty from Jacoby Brissett, but he made a lot of right decisions and had that late comeback drive to force overtime. Again, ultimately the Raiders do come out on top, but it's really interesting to look at this team, especially if they do, whether it's Tua's progression when he comes back or if it's a trade for like Deshaun Watson, what this team could be with just something other than a high-end backup leading the way. Because, man, if they can go toe-to-toe with the Raiders in Vegas with Brissett, I mean, imagine the amount of jump that they would have with someone like Deshaun Watson, which, what he's done off the field is, unexplainable, and it's no excuse. But if there was a trade, he could play. He's not on the commissioner's exempt list. Like, he could suit up once he has an understanding of the playbook. So, interesting things to definitely monitor there. Pats down 5 spots. I'm really worried about the passing game now. For all the reasons I liked Max Jones, I'm starting to get worried about it because he is very comfortable taking the underneath stuff and he's not going to force the issue. But now it feels like more of a problem compared to a positive in the first 2 weeks, in the sense that they're not trying to push the ball down the field. They're not taking chances. I don't know if it's Mac Jones doesn't want to, or if he's just, coming to that conclusion a second too late where he can't force that throw down the field, or it's because it's, Kendrick Bourne and Nelson Aguilar as their top 2 wide receivers, and those aren't guys who consistently win down the field. Aguilar is fast, but other than that, how much is he bringing to you as a pure route runner and deep threat other than just a guy who runs fast? And, Bourne had a nice grab this past weekend, but overall he's just not a big-time playmaking wide receiver. So I don't know who to give the blame to there, but I'm starting to worry about what this Pats offense might look like, especially if they're not running the ball well either. Damian Harris had a very bad week. So if you take away the running game and then turn the play action, and then once you take away play action, what can you have with Kendrick Bourne? I'm kind of going down a lot of different snowballs here, but kind of worried about what that offense might look like. Because even when you took away the run from Brady, obviously he was good enough to find a different way to win the game, but I don't think the Patriots are there just yet. So they come in at number 19. Vikings, I had a hard time thinking that they couldn't move up, but the teams ahead of them are just better right now. I know Minnesota comes away with a win over Seattle, but I have a ton of concerns with that Seattle coverage, and maybe I could have swapped the Vikings and the Seahawks, who are going to be at 16, you'll see here in a second. Probably should have, and you could make the argument there, both 1 and 2. And in a lot of ways, I feel like they're the same team, so if you think maybe I should have bunched them together. But they have explosive offenses, lots of talent on the outside, a quarterback that has proven to get it done this year. Kirk Cousins looked fantastic, but we'd all say Russell Wilson's better. But those defenses are just a problem, man, especially in the secondary. They're just going to have a hard time limiting big plays to go against them. So maybe the Vikings should be a couple spots higher. I'll admit an error there on my end, but I have them coming in at 18. This 18 to 16 window feels about right, despite them getting a big win this week. And, maybe you move Seattle down to 17 to keep those two together, and the Panthers should move up one more spot, but Carolina moved up 7 spots. I'm getting the message. I'm a little low on them, but I'm not going to crown them, man. I'm just not going to do it yet. They have beaten up on teams that they are better than, other than the Saints, which, we'll talk about that in a little bit. I think that with the addition of the Steelers beating the Bills week 1 are looking like some of the bigger fluky wins. I don't necessarily take away from the Panthers, but that just wasn't the same Saints team that we've seen from weeks 1 and 3. So I'm not trying to take anything away from the Panthers. I think that defense is really good. I don't know if it'll finish the year as the number 1 defense. I probably finish in the top 10 to 12. I think you'll see some regression, especially when you lose J.C. Horn. And right now, things are looking good on the offensive end, but let me see them face a legit test. Their closest thing to it was the Saints, with half their coaching staff feels like gone, and they're missing a ton of starters, including Marshawn Lattimore in that game against Carolina. So it didn't feel like a clear image of those two teams going head to head, but I am, making progress. Panthers up by 7. Carolina fans, don't hate me. And at number 16, this is where I have Seattle. Maybe they should come down a little bit lower, but I already moved them down 5 spots, and I have to think they're going to eventually figure it out. Russell Wilson is such a gamer. He's a beast. And, DK Metcalf finally starts to put together some stats. You obviously have Tyler Lockett in the mix. And maybe it's just some tweaks in the Shane Waldron offense, and it'll just take a few weeks and some game time to work out some of those errors and where they can get better. But I do have some concerns about what the offense looks like, but I'm really concerned about that secondary. And again, if they had known C.J. Henderson was just going to be a player who's, Dan Arnold caliber, and then a third, and then you get a fifth back plus C.J. Henderson, I have a hard time thinking Seattle's not interested in that. I just wondered if they didn't know that the price was that low, because, man, they could really use some extra cornerback help. Maybe there's a reunion in store with Richard Sherman. We'll see. Seems like he's got some options on the table. But, yeah, that defense and secondary in specific is just looking tough. So 16 feels like it might be on the high end, honestly, for Seattle. Denver Broncos moving up 2 more spots. This is going to be their first big test this week against the Baltimore Ravens. Can they do it against a serious opponent? Let's hope so if you're a Denver fan. But, give credit where credit's due. I think there is something to take away as a positive of beating teams that you should. And not only beating them, but outright bullying them. And, hey, they're a lot better than the Jets, so they should. So they're in 15. This is right around your playoff range, that, 14 to 15, outside the top 7 of each conference. So, therefore, if you look at it that way, I'm calling you a playoff caliber team. Ravens down 6 spots. And, again, this comes down to, I know they won, but it was a little closer than I think it should have been. And if Marquise Hollywood Brown's going to drop touchdowns, I'm that much more concerned about what that passing game is going to look like. But also, I just have to give credit to the teams ahead of them. I think a lot of teams played really good football, and also starting to come around. Some teams like the Cardinals starting to see what could be there as a potential team that could compete for the division title, but also work their way into the wild card mix for sure. So because of that, the Ravens get pushed down because other teams look really good. And I mean, this is just a really crowded area. This 16, maybe 18 through 9 range. It's no easy task to try to rank these teams in any sort of order, 9 through 18. But I have the Ravens down at 14 after, a close call there with Detroit. Now, if Hollywood Brown holds on to those passes, gets some touchdowns, definitely looks a little different. Then I have the Las Vegas Raiders coming in at number 13. Hey, they battled really well against the Dolphins. Down 14-0. They overcome that deficit. Ultimately do give up the lead just at the end of regulation. Go to overtime, but still get the job done. Finding ways to win games that feels like you aren't meant to win is a mark of a good team. And for whatever reason, it just felt like the Dolphins were there to play spoiler against the Raiders, but they were able to overcome a lot of the obstacles in front of them. And another 300-plus passing yard performance from Derek Carr. That offense still looks really good, and they didn't lean on Darren Waller, 5 catches, 54 yards. They didn't need him to be just a bailout anytime they needed a first down or a big play in general. So finding different ways to be productive on offense, and they're doing it without Josh Jacobs too, which is impressive as well. So they come in at number 13. San Francisco at 12. I know they lose. They're down 5 spots, but I think there's still some positive takeaway. The defense did a good job in a lot of ways, forcing Aaron Rodgers to only have Devontae Adams as a viable target, and then, Aaron Jones, some sprinkles of him there in the mix as well. But the problem was Aaron Rodgers called their bluff, and I mean, Devontae Adams was unguardable, whether it was Josh Norman or it was anybody else. That man was just having anything he wanted and then some. So definitely still some concerns there in the secondary for San Francisco. Again, I just wonder about that C.J. Henderson thing. But overall, they were able to go toe-to-toe, and if not for Aaron Rodgers' ridiculous drive to get them in field goal range at the end of regulation, we're talking about a very different outcome, and then you would think of the 49ers in a much more positive light. So they battled tough against the Packers. The Packers found a way to win it late. But now the question is going to be for San Francisco what we've been talking about with Chicago. It's like, when do we see the rookie quarterback? And the analogy I kind of thought of the other day was, it feels like Trey Lance is still the student taking the test, while Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy grading it, just in the sense that he understands how complicated that Kyle Shanahan offense has to be. And as the quarterback, you're not just having to understand what's going on, you have to answer all the questions that might come in your direction. That really meaning you have to be understanding of potential line adjustments, calling out potential blitzers from the other side, any audibles you want to make, what you check down to, can you change the formation at all, motions, everything that goes into that Kyle Shanahan offense. Not only do you have to understand it, but you have to be the one to direct it, coordinate it, and answer any sort of feedback or make adjustments when they are needed. So maybe Trey Lance just is not there yet compared to Garoppolo. So again, student taking the test versus the teacher grading the test, just two different ways of looking at there. But still like this team overall. Once we do see Lance, I think they can get that offense to a different level just because he is so dynamic. Cowboys coming in at 11, down 2 spots. I know they won, and they did it in a blowout fashion. But I just have to give credit to the teams above them. So this is not anything negative to say about Dallas, but I just think there were teams that looked better than them this week, which says a lot because they looked really good last night, both on the offense and the defensive side. I think Trevon Diggs has really stepped up and gotten that much better in year 2. And maybe I was wrong for thinking he could only be a high-end CB2. Maybe he can be a legit CB1. I'd still like to see them add another corner in the mix. Maybe it's just some of the young guys getting better, getting healthy. Or it's one more offseason, adding somebody in free agency or the draft. We'll see. But I'm really liking what I see from Diggs. Parsons all over the field, and the defense last night did a really good job limiting big plays, which kind of feels like it plays in the hands of Philadelphia. But I mean, they spanked the Eagles, so a ton of credit there to Dallas. Cardinals, I moved them up 6 spots, and I'm almost impressed the fact that it was close in the first half, just because, similar to what we talked about with the Raiders, sometimes there's just games where it feels like it's destined to be close or things are just working against you. Cross-country travel, the Jags are looking to prove people wrong, to say the least. They're looking to show that they are an NFL caliber team, honestly, in a lot of ways. And for whatever reason, that game was staying close, and then you just keep it equilibrium, you keep it even, and then Trevor Lawrence makes the mistake, pick 6 from Byron Murphy, and then the snowballs into a big Cardinals win. So I think there's some resilience to take away there. Arizona battled with them and then did what good teams do. They pulled away once they got that advantage. They were able to put the pedal down to the floor and just take off down the highway, trouncing the Jags. And the Titans coming in at number 9. I mean, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from this team. It wasn't necessarily the prettiest game from Ryan Tannehill. And, A.J. Brown gets hurt. Julio Jones is on a snap count, it feels like. So a team that's built around the dudes. The dudes are kind of limited right now, which is not a good sign. But Tannehill and Derrick Henry proved to be enough. And Tannehill's doing it with, obviously, limited amount of work with Julio Jones and A.J. Brown leaving. I mean, it's really impressive what he's been able to do in a lot of ways. And then Derrick Henry, once he gets his touches, man, I don't know. It doesn't make sense, but he just gets so much better as the game goes on. And big division win, so I have to give him credit there. They're at 9. New Orleans Saints cracked the top 10 for the first time this year on my power rankings. They come in at number 8. And I mean, I think they showed in that game that defense can be special if they're at 100%. If the coaches, aren't battling COVID and they have all the regular faces on the sideline or up in the box, wherever they are, and the defense has its full arsenal of weapons, it could be a defense that stops anybody, which is just scary because they have a good pass rush with Jordan and Davenport both look really good. Then you have some pieces in the secondary that have looked solid. Marshawn Lattimore is the top-rated coverage quarter in PFF coverage rating. And Paul Adebo's had some moments. He also had some games where he didn't look so good, like in Carolina. But nonetheless, they're getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back. Things are starting to line up. That defense could be scary good. And a ton of credit has to go to Dennis Allen. He's done a fantastic job. And, I didn't mention it with the Cowboys, but it feels like I have a bit of an NFL football crush on Kellen Moore's offense. I think he's doing a great job there. And every week I watch the Saints, I just become more and more enamored with what Dennis Allen's been able to do as the defensive coordinator. I think he's done a stellar job, and he might be in the mix for potential head coach openings this upcoming offseason. Chargers moving up to number 7, and man, what a win against Kansas City, who's above them at 6. I mean, going on the road, taking down a division rival, and I mean, it was close pretty much the whole way through. Brandon Staley not content with getting the field goal. Also, Vizcaino missed the extra points. Maybe there's something else he knew there. But being aggressive, trying to get the first down, trying to get the touchdown, chew more clock against Kansas City, playing to win as opposed to playing not to lose. love to see that, especially from a young head coach, Brandon Staley, in his first year. And Herbert continues to be a guy who can go throw for throw with just about anybody. I mean, he continues to look awesome. Mike Williams made some big plays in this game. If he could be a consistent, big-time part of the offense, that takes a lot of weight off the shoulders of Keenan Allen and makes it that much better of an offense overall. Austin Eckler, of course, in the mix as well. The offensive line did a solid enough job. I'm really liking this Chargers team, and for once, it feels like the hype is being lived up to, at least in the early goings of this season. I really liked what I've seen from the Chargers. They come in at 7. Kansas City, who the Chargers beat, are still ahead of them at 6. And I mean, like, I know they're 1-2, and I have them over, the team that just beat them, who's 2-1. And the Chiefs are in last place in the AFC West, but I have them as the top team in my power rankings. And that's because I trust that they're going to turn it around, and because I'm not going to doubt Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce on offense, with Andy Reid hopefully feeling better. He was just released from the hospital yesterday, so that's obviously a good sign for Kansas City. And they have some defensive playmakers. Maybe they need to make some adjustments and bring in an edge so you can play Chris Jones back on the inside, or maybe just an edge in general to play opposite Chris Jones. And Tyrann Mathieu still a playmaker, but they could use some cornerback help to try to not force him to always have to make big plays like he did in week 2. Whatever the case may be, this Chiefs team is going to figure it out. They're well coached. They have a ton of talent. They're a good football team, and they're still the most talented team in the AFC. So let's not get too out of hand. Even though I don't have them as the number 1 team in the AFC in my power rankings, that's because I'm giving respect where respect is deserved to other teams. When it all comes down to it, this is not my end of the season predictions. When it comes down to playoff time, I'm expecting the Chiefs to be right there in the AFC Championship game. Packers coming in at number 5. They get the big win over San Francisco. And, I mean, Aaron Rodgers just does what he does, man. Like, against all odds, just leads the team down the field, puts Mason Crosby in a position to kick the game-winning field goal, and he executes. Green Bay, big win on the road. I mean, that was one where it had to feel good for Rodgers to get one back based off how the 49ers just pushed Green Bay around back in 2019 2 different times. So it definitely had to feel good. Plus, it's in California. That's where he's from. Hometown showing there as well. Really liked what I saw from Green Bay. Their defense looked a little better as well. So things starting to look up for Green Bay for sure. Buffalo comes in at number 4. Another dominant win. They blow out the Dolphins. Now they're blowing out Washington football team. 2 teams that have good defenses. I know Washington really hasn't looked like it, but going to the Miami game, I think their secondary still played well despite giving up 35 points. But the Bills are beating good teams, and that's the exact way to bounce back from a weird Week 1 loss to Pittsburgh, which feels more fluky than any game over the course of the NFL so far. So it's good to see the Bills are getting back on track, and Josh Allen has gotten better week by week, but he still isn't quite the level he was playing at last week, which is scary for the rest of the NFL for sure. Bucs down 2 spots, they lose to the Rams, and it wasn't necessarily even close, but I mean, this is what I said was going to happen. We'll go ahead and talk about the Rams as well here. They come in at number 1. I told y'all, if you're familiar with the channel, this is exactly what I've been saying, and I'm going to take a bit of a victory lap here. I said the Rams were going to be the storyline of the first quarter of the year. That's not necessarily anything that nobody else has said either. It's been a common narrative, I think, but they are living up to that, and the offense is exciting. It's fun to watch. Matt Stafford's fitting right in. He was on the Manning cast last night talking about it. That's what the NFL kind of needed, and that's been the talking point. I think that's been the biggest storyline of the first half, just like I predicted to do. And the Rams come away with a big win at home. Now, I think when these 2 teams see each other in the postseason, hopefully Tampa Bay is a little bit healthier in the secondary. Because especially this week, I'll go off on a tangent here. Because the Bucs are so thin with Jamel Dean going down in this game, they play a lot of zones. And I am enamored with this Sean McVay offense and how it's gotten better and better, especially this year. Every play has a zone buster in it, whether it's, how many of those digs that we see with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp getting over the top of cover 2 or underneath the deep, third safety or cover 3 safety. He just found ways to always be able to bust zone coverage if that is what Tampa Bay was going to settle in. And then you also have the beater with Deshaun Jackson. That's mostly because Mike Edwards falls down, but nonetheless, T-Jax gets open and, that's a big play in that game. But also, just even if you have to run man against him, which Tampa Bay just wasn't in a position to do with how thin they are at corners, man, like Robert Woods is going to beat a lot of corners one-on-one. So is Cooper Kupp. But Deshaun Jackson still has plenty of speed left in him. This is just such a tough offense to try to contain. And ton of credit to the talent, to Matt Stafford, and to, of course, Sean McVay. But when these 2 teams, getting back to my point, see each other in the postseason, hopefully Tampa Bay is healthier in the secondary. That game might be played in Tampa as well. I would go Bucs there, but I think the Rams get the first meeting. The second time, I think Tampa Bay will have the answer. But that's obviously me speculating at the end of week 3. And then the last thing to talk about, Cleveland Browns coming in at number 2. I mean, they just dominated the Bears. And I mean, the Bears had aspirations to get in the playoffs this year, and you would not have guessed from this game. I mean, the Browns made them look just pitiful. I mean, not only did they abuse that offensive line, they made Justin Fields feel not only like a rookie, but a bad one at that. And the offense had some big plays. OBJ getting back in the mix. Baker wasn't terrible. That's obviously a welcome sign. Hopefully they can get Jarvis Landry back here pretty soon. Things are looking up for Cleveland. And right now, they might be playing like the best team in the AFC. So they come in at number 2, and we talked about it a little bit ago. Rams, my number 1 team. They've looked really fun so far. The defense has been great, built around Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. Continue to play at a high level, and then the offense has been everything, and then advertise, and then some. But that's going to do it for my Week 4 NFL Power Rankings. Tell me what you think down in the comment section. Who do I have too high? Who do I have too low? Who's your favorite team? Where do you think they fit in the mix? Love to have your thoughts. So let me hear it down in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. And if you're new to the channel and want more sports content like this, just hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for today's video. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.